this one? Okay. Hey guys, this is Ken Roczen, and we have been spending some time here in London, being in Europe, and we're about to talk about the past and me and how I came up racing, starting in the GPs and then headed over to the US. For me, starting up racing was, it was easy because my dad has already had a team. And we have our own property that my dad actually is still running. So we had a little Supercross track and a Motocross track. And with my dad having his own team, and once I showed up, I mean, it was really only a matter of time until I started getting my own bike. So I started at like 2.5 years old. And so that's obviously super early. You know, a lot of riders start up at 4, 5, 6-ish. But since I had my training grounds pretty much just as I walked out the door, was amazing, and you know that made things a lot easier. But I ran through so much gas early on because they weren't able to get me off the bike. So I was super fortunate for my dad, first off, to have the knowledge and already be in the whole dirt bike thing, and having a playground right in your backyard like that was so sick. And you know, even still now, going back to my dad's place is a fun thing. The track, it has changed a little bit throughout the years, but overall, like, it's pretty much all the same, and it's a cool feeling. I don't go back there too often, but every time I go, it's truly something special. I got support from Suzuki Europe pretty early on. So my dad had Suzukis back in the day, and that's what I was riding and racing before I even got any support. So at the age of, let's see, maybe when I was 9 or 10 is when I was starting to race German Championship in the 85cc class. And the first year, I believe it was just on our own, but after that, because I was doing really well, Suzuki Europe was picking it up, and they started giving us support. And there was always a little rivalry with Suzuki and KTM. I know that a little down the road, there was KTM and Suzuki, and KTM always kind of offered me a little bit more, but my dad was just true to what we liked, and he wasn't a big fan of just switching around back and forth, whoever gave us a little bit more. So we stuck with Suzuki for a long time. And even though KTM would give me like 2 bikes and parts and all that stuff, and from Suzuki I got 1 bike and just a little bit of support, we always stuck with Suzuki. And that was, yeah, at around age 10 or something like that. So fairly early on. I mean, I know in the US, it's a little bit different, but back then, like, our motocross scene wasn't that big. So for us, that was huge, not having to, we didn't have a whole lot of money. My grandparents back then were supporting us, and you know, it made things difficult because we had to race all throughout Europe, and it was a Suzuki thing, and pretty early on, and stuck with them for a long, long time. For me, it was pretty set in stone. I don't know if I have American blood running in me, but it was pretty set in stone that I was going to go to the US at one point. Having that in with Suzuki, and especially with the factory team, with Eric Gabors and Sylvain Gabors, they were obviously close friends with Roger DeCoster that ran the Makita Suzuki team, factory team over here. And they were the guys that kind of got me over here. So back, and that was actually way before I even started racing on the big bikes and started to become a factory guy and racing in the GPs. I think it was back in 2005 was the first time I came over to the US and raced Minios. And being over here, I mean, it was such a different world, right? Like, as a kid, and even nowadays still, the bike, like, people don't think about that, but the bikes, they smell so different, the fuel is different, right? Like, you come over here and it's a completely different ballgame. You're kind of out of your comfort zone because we weren't used to everything that was going on there. And I think racers and riders that go overseas for the first time, and in general, they know that the feeling is just so different, right? So my first year, I was a little bit standing out because I was racing the pink UFO gear, which is pretty iconic, and people seem to remember it all the time. But my first year was really a disaster. I mean, I was eating shit every freaking race, you know what I mean, and going for it. But it seemed like people remembered me, right? Like, I was going fast, and you know, I was this German kid, and I guess I had some style, and the first year was definitely a bit harsh. And it was Eric Gabors actually that kind of opened up that door, and my manager back in the day, Bert Punskin, he was running the Suzuki Europe team. So having that in with him and the contact with the Gabors brothers and factory teams really opened the doors for me to come over here. And then the following year, in 2006, was my second year I went to the Mini Olympics in Florida. And that's when I started winning stuff and going really good. And I was actually then already with Fox. That was my first year with Fox, and also with Red Bull. So coming over and racing that and winning, and people really seem to remember that even nowadays still. So after that, I started switching to the big bikes actually super early. When I was 13 is when I started racing German Championship and even German Championship Open, which is against the 450 class, which was a huge deal for us back then because it was still an international series, and a lot of good racers and even people from the GP, especially in the MX Youngster Cup and the ADAC MX Masters. They, you know, some of the people from the factory team like Ken de Dijker back in the day, Steve Ramon and Clement de Salle, like all those guys were racing. So me racing against them, it was a huge deal. And again, even back then, I was like starting to stand out with my speed and fitness and everything. So things were really going in the right direction. And I started getting a factory ride for the 2009 MX2 Championship, but I had to wait because I was still 14 years old and too young, and I had to turn 15 before I was able to start racing the GPs. And so I skipped about 4 or 5 races, I believe, because I was still 14, and then on my 15th birthday, I was able to race the World Championship, which that was huge because there weren't a lot of German riders racing it. It was Markus Schiffer back then and Max Nagel that also raced all of these German international races. So they were really good riders. And being one of the Germans and racing in front of the fans, and you know how it is with the GPs, like you have Germans come to like almost every single race of them because they're diehard fans. So it was such an incredible time. And I remember my first race actually it was Portugal, Agueda. And I got 9th in the first moto, and what did I do in the second one? I think I got 4th or something. Like, it was ridiculously good for my first ever, especially just turning 15. And then we went to the second round, and one of the motos I got 2nd actually, and I was having a really good battle with Anthony Boisier. And I mean, we were blown away. It was an amazing time. And from then on, you know, the GP started 2009, 2010. I should have actually won the championship, but I had some malfunctions on the bike 3 times throughout the year, so I got 2nd in the championship. And the following year, 2011, there was a big switch going on because I was still with Suzuki, and not 100% sure exactly what happened, but I think that was the time when Roger DeCoster was gonna switch over to KTM, and I was meant to go there, and things were kind of all lined up. So for me, it was pretty sure that I'm gonna have to switch to KTM, and I was young, right? Like, I didn't know about all of that stuff until my manager and my parents brought it up. And you know, it wasn't an ideal situation because we really wanted to stay with Suzuki at that point, but we also knew that going down the line that, you know, other opportunities would present itself. And I switched to KTM. It came kind of like out of nowhere for me, and so I made the switch for 2011. And just like that, it always seemed like it was going to be so far away for me to go over to the US because I really felt like a kid still. And it was a little bit intimidating because I just started racing the GPs, and like I said, it felt like a kid. And all of a sudden, I in the end of 2010 switched over to KTM, and I started racing KTM for the first time on the West Coast Supercross Championship, and I didn't even have that much time. I think we got over there at like November or something like that. And yeah, that was kind of like the beginning of my American adventure. Even though after the West Coast rounds, I had to go back to the GPs because that's when I split my time between the US and Europe. So I remember exactly, I was racing at Anaheim 3, and it was really a work in progress, right? Like, it was ugly. I had speed, and I was just going for it as a little kid in 2011. West Coast round, and starting to learn about Supercross. We were kind of all thrown in the dark because I had no Supercross experience, and just came over to the US like there you go. You know, didn't know where we would grocery shop and just kind of had to figure it all out ourselves. So it was ugly in the beginning, but I started showing some speed and some consistency towards the end. And what was really cool was I raced in, I think it was Anaheim 3, and it was the breast cancer awareness race. And that was my first podium, and that was right before the big break that West Coast always has. And I had a huge battle with Hansen and Tomac actually back then. I got third on the podium, which was freaking huge considering where we came from. And went over to Europe, and from then on, you know, I had the Supercross speed in me and just the intensity. So we started racing Bulgaria, and I just started destroying everybody and going 1-1 everywhere. And just, I had unbelievable speed right as the gate dropped. And the European way was always, you know, you kind of start off slow. I think back then it was actually when maybe it changed. I'm not 100% sure, but maybe 2011, it was still 35 minutes plus 2 laps, so 40-minute motos. It was huge, but I just started going for it right away. It had a huge gap and just started winning a lot and came back for we had 2 rounds to go. I skipped Seattle because that's when I was racing in Bulgaria, I believe, and for the first GP race, and Valkenswaard as well, and came back for Salt Lake City, and I went the last race third at Anaheim. We came to Salt Lake City, I got second. And then the last race in Las Vegas, and I won the main event, which was, you know, 3-2-1. I mean, we were over the moon, and the East-West Shootout, I got on the podium, I think, as well, or 4th or something. But, I mean, those were just stepping stones, right? Especially growing up watching the Supercross guys. So then I went off to win the championship in 2011 in the GPs, and it was an amazing year. So basically in the end of 2011, after the GPs, that's when I started becoming or living in the US full time. Once you've set the bar really high in your career, it's expected from you at all times, which has made it super difficult for me, just having a couple of really bad injuries that came with some other health issues that I've been battling with. So that's been really hard. I know that I can still win, and I'm putting in extremely hard work, and in so many ways I'm so much more mature and working harder than I did back in the day. But it seems like back in the day everything just came a lot easier to me. But I'm not giving up, and every single day I try to be better, and I'm still working on it. So we're all human, and at times it's really difficult, but yet people just expect you to be on par every single day, which has been super difficult for me. But you can't listen to everybody, and as long as I try my best and try to grow every single day, I guess I can live with it, and I'm still not done. I'm trying to be better every day. So obviously back in 2016 to 2017, I switched from Suzuki to a factory Honda, and those were exciting times for me, right? Like, it's factory Honda. Who doesn't want to race for them, right? So plus, I was on top of my game back then. You know, throughout 2016 outdoor season, I was pretty much unbeatable, and everything went wrong. You know, we wanted to go right, everything went wrong, and I had a couple of really big injuries that have taken me out from racing and training, and you know, not being able to do every, you know, single stuff every single day, and that's been super tough, right? Like, the injuries that also came with a bunch of health issues, trying to get back to the very top. You know, I didn't give myself any slack. I wanted to get back to where I was. And I reckon I wouldn't have been where I've come to now after these injuries, because I've had some really good years since then, if I wouldn't have been so hard on myself, because I didn't give myself any other option but getting back there. And in a way I was cocky about it, but I wanted to be, and I feel like I had to be. It held me accountable, and I'm glad that I did it. So I've been working really hard. It hasn't been easy, but at the same time, I've had some really good years with Honda. You know, chasing championships pretty much almost every single year, but this year. I've gotten back to winning. I've gotten back to winning multiple races, and I've also gotten back to just being in a championship hunt all the way until the last round. So I'm proud of myself for doing that, but I do believe that my journey isn't over yet, so to be continued. Courtney and Griffin are my life. It's really difficult to put in words, right? Like, before Court, I was the wild child and did whatever the heck I want. You know, we've been together for 8 years now, which is long. Like, they went by like this, but at the same time, it's the longest I've ever been with a girl. or woman. I mean, she is a little bit older. But I love coming home at the end of the day, and you know, Griffin now for the past 2 years, but having a shoulder to lean on, especially with the difficult time that we have gone through. But she has been nothing but supportive, and I seriously couldn't imagine life without them. And I'm super glad to have them on my side to go through this journey. And we've had such great times together, and even Court's family and Blake, we've gone through so much training together and so much cool experiences and just learning every single year. So it really has been a family team effort, and it means everything to me. It was really a no-brainer for me. It's been a long time since I've raced in Europe in general, and we have a very monotonous schedule over in the US, right? We start racing in January and we don't finish until September. And with that kind of schedule in the past years, it can get very draining. It's almost every single weekend with no off time, and we're really only able to do that. I looked at this as a fun thing. Of course, it made sense financially. Like, I also have to look out for my family and do what's best, and everything was just meant to be. And I had no problem saying no to my written offer for now. And I'm glad that I did, because I am enjoying my time here in Europe. I can't wait to interact with the fans, see the fans. I can't wait for them to see me race and get a feel for what it is. It's been way too long, and I was ready for it. So I'm so glad I made the decision. And instead of always thinking about racing every single weekend, well, this has been, you know, a vacation for us. We've gone sightseeing every single day since we've been here in London. That's stuff that we normally don't get to do because we don't have time. So I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that my family's here with me. And I am super glad to be connecting the sightseeing and this fun adventure with racing on the weekends. I've left a factory team for obvious reasons. For now, had to leave them, but I have no doubt in my mind, just because I am with a privateer team right now, that we're capable of winning. And if anything, I feel like it comes with a lot of positives. You know, we can do whatever we want, and the people that are around me right now want to win, and I know that they're ready to do anything and everything. So if anything, that's a bonus actually. And I'm pumped where I'm at right now. I've been, even for the very short amount of time that we've had the test, I've gotten comfortable on the bike, and I'm very curious to see how we do it on race day. And it's coming out really quick, and I couldn't be more excited. So a lot of people thought that I was done this year, and I don't blame them, right? Like, I had a really difficult time, but what's next for me is I'm gonna focus on these couple of races that I'm doing here, and at the same time, I am in full prep for American Supercross and Motocross for these next couple of years. I'm putting my head down. I'm continuing to work on my body, and like I said, I wanna do this, and I still wanna give this a legit shot. This year has been tough for me, but I will bounce back just like how I've done in the past. And like I said, my focus is on racing these next couple of years. I don't know what team's gonna pick me up, if a team's gonna pick me up. No matter what, as soon as we're done with these couple of World Supercross rounds, I'm gonna snatch a bike somewhere, and I'm gonna get to working. And if that means I have to show up at Anaheim 1 as a privateer, so be it. Because in the end, I don't think there has been a privateer that has won Anaheim 1, but maybe it'll be me. Throughout all of this hard time that's been going on, and you know, with social media nowadays and the internet, I know there are a lot of haters and people that doubt you and all that kind of stuff. I don't really want to focus on them too much, but you know, 90% of people have done nothing but support me, even in difficult times. And you guys are the reason I'm still doing this, and you have no idea how much I appreciate this. So with what I'm doing with these races here right now is my way of giving back to you. And of course, this is being over in Europe, but I just mean throughout the entire world. You guys mean the world to me, and hopefully we have many more years to come, and I appreciate your support, and let's keep it going. Overall, we're really happy, looking to improve from here, and we'll see everybody at Melbourne.